welcome to In the Red Zone with Matt and Cal. I'm Matt.
And I must be Cal.
And this is our very first show.
That it is, Matt. Today we're doing our top 3 free agents in every major position, starting with quarterback. At number 1, I have Ryan Fitzpatrick going from Buffalo to Tennessee for 2 years, $6.5 million. Matt?
I like this signing. I like how I think there would be a quarterback battle between him and Locker. Locker is young, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is, a veteran, you could say, and he knows the ropes a little more than Locker, but Locker could possibly be better. We all know Ryan Fitzpatrick can't close out games, and he also throws some stupid passes instead of throwing it away or spiking it. He throws it down the field, hoping that someone's going to make a spectacular
Which you
catch.
can't do.
Right.
Especially on being on Buffalo last year with a team that did not have a receiver who can go up and get it.
Yeah.
I mean, Stevie Johnson isn't a huge guy to go up and get it. At number 2, I have Matt Castle going from Kansas City to Minnesota. He's signed 2 years, $3.7 million, and his best stat, which isn't even really a great stat, is 6 touchdowns. And I think you need a good system to be a good quarterback. Like when he was with New England, the year Tom Brady went out, he led them to a 10-6 season, which is not a bad season.
I think his life as a starter is over.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think they know Christian Ponder's the guy they're going to go to, and he could even be not even a backup. He could be on the practice field behind.
I think
the
he'll
second
definitely
string.
be a backup.
You think he'll be a backup?
Yeah, number 2.
Was Matt Castle the only thing wrong in Kansas City? Because everyone is saying how they have great weapons. They have Dwayne Bowe. They have Jamal Charles. They have a solid defense. That they just can't win. Is it Matt Castle?
I really don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I personally think it is. I think they now they have Steve Smith or Alex Smith, excuse me. There, I think they could actually make a playoff. They could make the playoffs this year, and I think Matt Castle is just awful.
Yeah. At number 2, or at my third quarterback, who I think I should have put at number 2, but I'm not really sure, is Matt Hasselbeck, going from Tennessee to Indy for 2 years, $8 million. His best stat for an old quarterback and a backup, an 81.0 passer rating. And I think he'll be a great mentor for Andrew Luck.
This year he's going to be entering his 15th season. He's getting old, and it's not like he's used to being a backup per se.
Yeah.
Except for last year, and I think
And he even played quite a bit last year with.
He did play quite a bit last year,
team.
and I like how he's going to be a backup to Andrew Luck. I think he knows enough. He's had the experience that he can teach Andrew Luck a few things.
Yeah.
And I like how he's going to mentor him. And I think he'll do a good job mentoring him.
Yeah.
I think he knows the situation that he's getting old. He's not so great anymore, and he's this new contract that you mentioned. He's not guaranteed any money.
Oh, that's
And
pretty big.
this 2-year contract, so by the time his 2-year contract is up, he'll be 17 years, and a 17-year backup in the NFL,
You're not going to last long.
you're not going to last. So I personally think that this contract will be his last.
Okay. Moving on to running backs, I have Reggie Bush going from Miami to Detroit for 4 years, $16 million. That's a lot of money. He had 986 yards last year rushing, and I'm wondering how he's going to do against better NFC North defenses.
I don't think he's going to have a problem getting a starting job here.
No,
I
not at
think Mike Lucier is not a very good running back, and he didn't really show up. And Stafford needs a running back.
Of course.
He threw the ball 45 times a game, which is the most in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so that's why you think, well, Matt Stafford is a good quarterback.
Yeah.
Why aren't they winning? It's because all the defenses are going to be like, well, they're just going to keep passing. We know how to do this. So the teams that...
All they do is prepare against the pass.
Yeah, all the teams that have bad defenses do a good job against Detroit because they know him. So, and even if they decide to run, they don't even have running backs to do that.
They can't do it.
And so now I think they're going to use Reggie Bush more. And I think they're going to have a good mix there. And I think they're going to win next year.
I mean, he's not an elite back, but I think he's enough to give them that push for a solid running back. At number 2, which I could put at number 1, I'm not really sure at the moment, but I have Steven Jackson coming from St. Louis, going to Atlanta for 3 years, $12 million. That is starter money. Will he get it with Jacquizz Rodgers?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that Steven Jackson will have the starting job. I hope so. It's a good fit if they're planning to have him be the only back and not add Jacquizz Rodgers in there, because Jacquizz Rodgers would mix up with Michael Turner, and he wouldn't really be good because
Yeah.
he had like this one game where he had a good game over 100 yards, and then they thought, hey, he'll have another game. It didn't come. Next week comes, he'll have a good game. It didn't come. They
Yeah.
waited and they waited and they waited and they waited way too long. It didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this $12 million for 3 years is a good if Steven Jackson is going to be the only running back for Atlanta. And Michael Turner, when he was on the team, missed 5 games in 5 seasons.
So you won't have that durability question with Steven Jackson.
Right, and Jackson missed 6 games in the last 5 seasons. So you still have that reliability and that strength, and I don't think he'll get hurt, and I think he'll do a good job.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So I think I might be moving him up to my number 1 free agent running
We'll
back
have to
signing.
see. I think so, too.
Number 3 in a weak running back class, a weak running back free agency, excuse me. I have Rashard Mendenhall going from Pittsburgh to Arizona for 1 year, $2.5 million. I mean, he did not have a lot of stats last year, but I think since he's a young guy, he could definitely lead Arizona's rushing attack. Matt?
Well, the free agency this year between the quarterbacks and the running backs hasn't been great or even good,
Yeah.
frankly. And Arizona, they got on some of that. They signed Drew Stanton, which we don't know how good he's going to be.
Yeah.
There's all this quarterback nonsense going on in Arizona. Well, not nonsense, some sense, but
And
they
we'll
gotta
see what
figure
they
it
do
out.
if they draft a quarterback. That could just
Exactly.
change everything else up.
And I think Rashard Mendenhall could be the starter. They're going to try and make him into the starter he was in 2010, and he's still young and he's still got time.
Yeah.
And I like the sign.
Emphasis on how young he is,
Yes.
because he still has that ability to have the
Yes.
explosive plays. And moving on to wide receivers, at number 1, I have Mike Wallace coming from Pittsburgh to Miami for 5 years, $60 million. That is a lot of money for a receiver who, frankly, I don't think is that elite.
I think he is. I think this is great for Tannehill. You know, last year Tannehill did a good job, and now Miami's like, this is our guy. Tannehill is our quarterback. We're going to go with for who knows how long.
Yeah.
And so after they lost Brandon Marshall to Chicago, I like this new wide receiver coming in.
Yeah.
And he's debatably the fastest receiver in the league. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.33 seconds. He's also over 6 feet. You don't see that a lot.
It's great mobility for a big wide receiver.
Yes, we all remember the last year's game against the New York Giants where he had that 50-something yard
break off.
touchdown. And we all know he caught the ball at 10 yards, and he ran up the sideline for the other 40-something yards. And as soon as they caught it and started turning, we all thought, he's gone.
Yeah, because we know how fast he is.
Exactly.
But I don't think with the drops and the amount of yards at 836 last year, I don't think he'll be able to have that production for $60 million.
But Roethlisberger did throw to other people, and now Tannehill is going to have this guy. He's going to go to him a lot, I think. Mike Wallace is going to be the main guy. He's going to be the number 1 receiver. He's going to be the one they want to go to.
Okay. And number 2, which I'm thinking about putting at number 1, I have Wes Welker going from New England to Denver for 2 years, $12 million. His best stat was 1,354 yards. And a good thing for him is he's going from one great elite quarterback in Tom Brady to another great one, Peyton Manning. Matt?
Well, now Denver has a triple threat.
Of course.
They didn't have that slot receiver and the kind of slot receiver that Wes Welker is. And the triple threat is Demaryius Thomas, who's the deep threat.
Yeah.
Then you have Eric Decker, who could run outs and ins and, you know, all these different types of short to medium to long distance routes. And now you have Welker, who is going to fulfill that slot position.
I mean, no one runs the 5-yard in like Wes Welker does,
He did drop a few passes.
especially on the deep ball.
Yes, he's not a deep ball guy. They would have him do a 5-yard in and then have him throw off the defense and shoot out to the middle of the field, downfield, where he wouldn't make the catch.
Because that's a tough, especially because he's not a big wide receiver.
Exactly, he's 5'10".
And he had trouble
5'11".
getting his hands up
Right.
with the ball. At number 3, I have Greg Jennings going from Green Bay to Minnesota. His contract is worth a total of $47 million. His best stat last year was he had 366 yards receiving. And of course, it's hard to tell with a guy who has an injury. But I think he'll be a great receiver for the young quarterback, Christian Ponder.
I like that he's staying in the division. This makes things interesting. I'm surprised Green Bay didn't want to try harder to keep him, but
I
he's
know.
getting old. And I think that they're going to try and make Jordy Nelson to be the #1 receiver, and I think he's ready.
Yeah. And what's that do for Minnesota? Where does that put them at a?
Well, they're going to have to make him. They're going to have him be their #1 receiver now. They lost Percy Harvin and Sidney Rice to the Seahawks. You know, they're regrouping now.
Yeah.
And they signed Jerome Simpson, Minnesota did, and who knows how good he is. And so, I don't know. It's hard to tell how Greg Jennings is going to do. What I think he's going to be about average.
Yeah.
I don't think he's done yet.
Okay. And Matt, who do you have for your top 3 tight ends?
My top 3 tight ends, #1, I have Jared Cook going to St. Louis. His contract is $35 million for 5 years. I think he's going to prove his worth in Tennessee. And so now Tennessee, when they didn't have a tight end, they signed Delaney Walker. Delaney Walker was overshadowed by Vernon Davis, but Delaney Walker still had 344 yards as a backup in a non-2 tight end set. They
And that's a
didn't
tough
run
thing to do.
twins.
Especially with
And,
Vernon Davis as the other wide receiver, you're not other tight end. Excuse me. You're not going to get a lot of balls thrown to you.
Yep. I think he will become possibly one of the best tight ends in the league. And he's getting $17.5 million over 4 years.
I agree with you completely.
I think that's a very fulfilling contract.
Okay.
My third is Dustin Keller, another great target for Tannehill.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got Mike Wallace, as I said earlier, and now they have a tight end. And he's going to come back from that injury last year that put him out half the season. And I think it's going to stir up some real trouble in the AFC East. I think he'll be hard to defend.
Mm-hmm.
And another note I'd like to make about another player, Tony Gonzalez. He re-signed. He didn't sign with a different team, but I thought it would be important to talk about him because he debated retiring, and we all thought he was going to. He said it was his last year. Turns out it's not. Do you like him re-signing?
I think re-signing was a tremendous move by Tony Gonzalez and the Falcons organization. I mean, he wants to win, and that is in his blood. And I think it's less about the money, more about winning games.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he'll be a great leader, and he'll have a lot of days off during practices.
We already know Atlanta needs him, and they want him. He only one playoff win in his 14 years, which was last year, and they were so close to making it to the magical game of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Obviously. So, and I think they're getting closer and closer, and I think he knows that they're getting closer and closer, and he just wants to win so badly, and I think he deserves it.
I think I can't disagree with you because it's true. And he'll be a great leader for
Yes.
younger
Yes.
players,
Yes,
especially because they're going to get a young tight end. They
Yes,
have to.
He's very charismatic, too.
Yeah. And now moving on to our D-line our top free agents. At #1, and possibly one of the top free agents overall this year, is Elvis Dumervil, going from Denver to Atlanta for 5 years, $36 million. He had 6 forced fumbles last year, but he also had Von Miller on the other side of him, causing some havoc.
Well, he's joining a regrouping Ravens team who's lost
Quite a few players.
quite a few players. They lost Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. And Harbaugh is trying to bring it back, you know? He's trying to regroup their defense, and, you know, obviously they're going to have a lot of defensive positions to fulfill. And I like this because they are known to be a good defensive team.
Yeah.
And this contract, $52 million,
Yeah. It's a lot of money.
is the 7th best on Baltimore, the 7th highest paid.
Who's #1?
Joe Flacco,
Of course,
obviously.
right. That's 100-something million.
20-something million a year.
Yeah.
Biggest in history.
It's huge.
And Elvis Dumervil had 37.5 sacks over the last 3 years. That's like 12 sacks a year, which is very good. You know,
That's
you want to
incredible.
People say you want to get into that double digits for sacks.
Got to.
And he's gotten into it. And he's also one of the best free agents this year.
Yeah, of course. Moving on, my #2, I have Daniel Ellerbe, moving from Baltimore to Miami. I think he'll be a great addition to the Miami team. He signed 5 years, $26 million. He had 92 tackles last year, but he also had a very good linebacker in Terrell Suggs on the other side of him last year. So it'll be interesting to see how he'll do as the premier pass rusher.
It's very key that as a defensive lineman he had 92 tackles.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Baltimore has lost another defensive guy. I don't know why,
They're losing
they're
their
losing
entire
everybody.
defense, basically.
But you got to move on. So I don't like the signing so much. I would have liked to seen him stay in Baltimore and do what he's been doing.
It's tough, especially when you're the Super Bowl champs. It's going to be difficult for them to repeat with all the people they've lost. Moving on to 3, my third best D lineman is Cliff Averill, coming from Detroit to Seattle for 3 years, $30 million. He had 9.5 sacks last year, and I think he'll really be a good addition to that already strong Seattle defense.
Well, I put my third as 2 people, Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett.
Yeah.
Because they're both defensive lineman free agents, and they're both going to Seattle. And you're adding 2 defensive ends to their defense that needs improvement. They need more pressure on the quarterback. Averill had 20 sacks in the last 2 years, so not great, but good. And he can also force the ball out. He gets forced fumbles. And Bennett had 9 sacks last year. And they're also going to be joining defensive lineman Chris Clemens, who had 11 sacks last year. And so I like how they're building their defensive lineup, and I like it.
Now on to our final position, defensive back. At number 1, I have Ed Reed, one of the greatest free safeties in the history of the NFL, going from Baltimore to Houston for 3 years, $16 million. Matt?
This is a huge signing. Houston is one of the best defensive teams in the NFL.
And this just makes them that much better.
But they need help stopping the pass.
Yeah.
I don't see signs of Ed Reed
slowing down.
He's obviously on the decline, but I don't see him he'll go for an interception and he just misses it.
Yeah, I don't think he'll ever do that.
He's just going to halt. I don't think there's just a roadblock there that he's not going to get to. And Baltimore, obviously, again, is going to need help there. And 3, he's 11-year player, and they signed him for 3 years. Now, he'll be 14-year player at the end of that. For a defensive back,
that you got to have your speed.
Right, you got to have speed, strength, and all that. And I don't know if he's still going to have that by then, but the $15 million for the 3 years is nice.
Okay, moving on to number 2, I have Patrick Chung, going from New England to Philly for 3 years, $10 million. He had 44 tackles last year, which is pretty impressive for a defensive back. Matt?
Well, again, I had him a joint between Patrick Chung and Kenny Phillips.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see both these guys start next year at the safety position.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Philadelphia, believe it or not, actually only allowed 218 passing yards per game last year, but they only had 8 picks.
Yeah. So interceptions wasn't a problem.
That's one interception every 2 games. That's the third. It was the 3rd worst. They have to create turnovers, frankly, and I like what they're doing here. I like these 2 guys to do that. Patrick Chung, Chip Kelly, the new coach there, he's been known for his offense.
And
Oregon
his speed.
was 2nd in offense with 50 points per game, not really known for his defense.
So we'll see how that
But we'll
plays
see
out.
how that's going to turn out.
And now our final player on our list is Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, going from Philly to Denver for 2 years, $10 million. His best stat, 51 tackles, which again is pretty good for a D-back.
Short-term deal. It's very short, only 2 years. But that's the deal with Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. He could fit his way into a second quarterback position, but that would be a battle between Chris Harris. Obviously, you have that other cornerback there for Denver, Tracy Porter.
Yeah.
Or not Tracy Porter, the other quarterback there. Excuse me, I can't think of his name right now. Champ Bailey, thank you. Champ Bailey, obviously, he's not going to give up his position.
Well,
they're not going to give up his position.
Especially being a seasoned veteran who's always been with this team.
Yeah, he's first ballot Hall of Famer. But as far as the other cornerback goes, Chris Harris, I think he could beat that.
Yep.
Are we good?
Yep.
All
That's
right.
our show.
This has been In the Red Zone with Matt and Cal. Thanks for watching.